Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings, digging back into fantasy football research for 2022. Today we're talking about projections versus reality versus ADP, and some of these situations on offense where we're not quite sure what's going on with these teams, be it injuries, be it suspensions, projected suspensions, and how difficult that is to project out, and if there is any wiggle room on this that could actually present some value. If you want to hit the full Pat Mayo Experience football package, I mean, it's not really a package, just a list of shows that are completely free to watch or listen to, hit the description or the comment section of this video and podcast, and you can check them all out there. We've done a bunch of different things so far. We're going to try not to talk about Gabe Davis today because that's just been a lingering topic. Plus, I have a show coming out with Bobby Gomes pretty soon where we talk about the rising ADP of Gabe Davis and when does it become a point where it's potentially too much and you might want to construct your teams in a different way, even your bill stacks in a different way. The guy's won a millionaire maker, so he's got some good insight into roster construction, even for best ball, and how that might play itself out on DraftKings. Today, joining me to break all of this down, a master of projections from Establish the Run, from Football Guys. You can also check out his Substack where he does some great in-depth material. Anthony Amico, what is happening, my man?
What's up, Pat? Thanks for having me today. Pumped to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you've been digging into this for a while. I got Leone coming on to help me with my wide receiver rankings. Yeah, ranking season is coming soon. I got Leone for wide receiver rankings to help me build the tiers. Jake Seeley for the running backs to build my running back tiers. Then I'm going to have my super show for the top 150 for the fantasy football season. Anyway, we're getting, once Independence Day passes, or Canada Day if you're in Canada, it's time to really lock down on football. But these shows have been super instructive to me of just even coming through with projections and figuring all that stuff out. If you want to build your own projections for free, it's super easy. You can customize them any way you want and how you think the season is going to go. Over at runthesims.com, there's some pay tools over there for betting and for DFS, but the season-long projection builder is completely free to anyone who has an email address. So runthesims.com, go use the projection builder under the NFL tab for free. Let's jump into this right away. I want to talk about the New Orleans Saints, about what is going on with this team. We have two big question marks. One, I mean, I see Jameis and his weird workouts. Apparently, he's going to be fine for the season. He's going to be their starting quarterback. Obviously, no Sean Payton at this point, but we're dealing with the potential for an Alvin Kamara suspension, potentially up to 6 games, maybe even more, potentially less at this point. But it seems like he sees it coming, which means that I want to see that coming and what we do with that backfield and how this offense is going to run. And then you have the entire Michael Thomas situation, which is just a complete question mark at this point. They go out, they sign Jarvis Landry, they go and draft a receiver who could potentially take over as a number 1 right now. You have Taysom Hill mixing back in as probably a part of the receiving game. And then you have this Michael Thomas albatross. We don't even know if he's going to play at this point to start the season, do we?
No, I mean, I think that this is one of the weirdest situations in football that we've had for the last few couple seasons. I thought that maybe this was some weird Drew Brees thing. He wasn't going to know Brees, wasn't going to know Peyton, something like that. But now both those guys are gone. We're still not sure if Michael Thomas is going to play football. They draft Chris Olave 11th overall. So, they have, I guess, some reserves, in the chamber here. They have Jarvis Landry, but the Thomas thing is so weird to me.
How do you go about projecting that out then? When you're running the season-long projections, do you say, hey, he's going to play week 1, he's going to have a 23% market share of the targets, that's going to be great, he's wildly undervalued, or do you have to kind of play the different range of outcomes? He just might sit out for 8 weeks for reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely leaning more conservative with him just because he hasn't played. If you told me that the same thing that happened last year is going to happen this year, which is that he doesn't play at all, that really wouldn't surprise me. So I'm being very conservative with him right now. Only a 16% target share. We know that in the past he's been closer to that 30 range. When he was healthy and playing with Breeze and kind of in those prime years. So is there some meat on the bone with a guy like Michael Thomas where he's a value and he ends up catching all these balls? I guess it's possible, but I just don't really see it as likely right now. I think we have to treat him as either someone who's going to be limited by injury, maybe not the same level of explosiveness after injury, or just straight up won't play. So I'm leaning more into the Olave stuff. I would like to lean into the running back target share stuff also, but you mentioned it's a little murky with Kamara as well. So I think Olave is probably the guy that I'm looking at the most here with all this craziness.
With our projections at runthesims.com, the standard baseline, it seems like Justin has gone pretty conservative with those too. It's essentially a 16% market share for Olave, Landry, and Michael Thomas. And that hedge on Michael Thomas, I mean, I don't even really know how the 16% works. That's probably what the median projection comes out to be, because like you said, it could be upwards of like 32 if he plays every single game, because that's what Michael Thomas has done historically in this offense. But to get to 16, that would almost be like he misses 8 games, then comes back and is good Michael Thomas. Currently, he's going around pick like 75 in DraftKings best ball drafts. In season-long leagues, like he's going a little bit deeper than that, but it's not like he's a free square in the 13th round. You do have to invest some draft capital. He's going the highest of all 3 of these receivers. Is that too high to take that risk?
Yeah, I think that's way too high. And maybe this is just like the spurned lover, because last year, we had this thing with him and I was kind of going in a little heavier. Granted, he was going a little later in drafts, but like I just can't justify taking him over, breakout candidates like Elijah Moore, older veterans who I think I trust a little bit more, like Adam Thielen. We have guys like all these young guys and rookies are in that range. Like I just can't get behind Michael Thomas right now.
Who would be? So Olave would be the Saints receiver that you would go to?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's this element always with the rookies of, maybe we'll have a little bit of struggle for production early, but down the stretch, these are guys who can win you your league. And I actually kind of like the marriage of Olave with the Saints, that Jameis in the past has had this ability to throw the ball deep down the field. I think it's maybe a little debated how effective he's been in those situations, but we know he loves to do that. And Olave was one of the best deep threats in the draft. So if I'm looking at the receiver room right now, like I feel like Jarvis Landry is the guy that will do the slant boy, Michael Thomas type stuff. But Olave is one who can really create his own kind of unique role in this offense.
Yeah, he's the potential to have the biggest breakout, but you might end up going with the safety of Landry. Landry's going around 30 picks after Olave. Olave is going around 100, 130 for Jarvis Landry right now. I mean, is this even an offense that you do want to invest in? Because it just seems like I don't know how it's going to function in reality, but on paper, you see these names, and if this was like 4 years ago, this would be the best offense in football. And they're not too far removed from being some of those guys. Like, when you think about the range of outcomes with the Saints offense here, like how high is high for them and how low is low?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like a fantasy-friendly offense because you'd expect them to be a little more run-heavy with a defensive coordinator basically as the head coach. They are bringing Jameis back off the injury, and we know that they were pretty conservative with him last year with the same offensive coordinator, but not with Sean Payton. But with Sean Payton last year, he's not here now. So it doesn't feel like a fantasy-friendly offense, but I think that there's still this element of ambiguity, and usually these like ambiguous situations tend to give some kind of value somewhere. Like I don't think that anyone expects the Saints to like throw for 3,000 yards this year. Like they're still going to get close to that 4,000 yard number. Someone has to catch those passes, and I think that that's probably going to provide some value.
And if Jameis is all the way back and they unleash him a little bit more and don't take the conservative route that they did a year ago, and let's say Michael Thomas is fine, let's say Kamara isn't suspended, theoretically they could be a top 10 offense, couldn't they?
Yeah, like I mean, we love Jameis. Like we're all Jameis fans on these streets, Pat. I don't know. Like I think that he's fun. He makes offenses go. Like if they let him throw the ball and they have all these weapons, like it's kind of exciting. And I think that we can reason a little bit that last year with limited weapons, no Thomas, no young threat, like they didn't have an Olave type last year, that it made sense for them to go conservative. Maybe they're looking to open it up a little bit more in 2022.
Do we have any love for any of the tight ends in this offense? I remember when Adam Troutman was a thing last preseason. It turned out he was just terrible.
Yeah, I just can't do it with the tight ends. Like I'm going to stick to the guys that we already think are pretty decent at football, which is Thomas, Olave, Landry. Like those are the guys I'm looking at. I think this tight end position it's either going to be not heavily targeted, or I think they're going to have a pretty decent rotation going with Troutman, Nick Vannett, Jawan Johnson. I guess Taysom Hill is in the mix. Like, there's just too many bodies here for me.
Yeah, how does Taysom Hill factor into this team now that Sean Payton is no longer around? Is he still going to get his quarterback snaps? Will there be like, I know they brought in Andy Dalton to be like the backup quarterback, which kind of signals that Taysom Hill is going to be pushed off to the side, whether it be as an H-back, a tight end, mixing his way in. Because it feels like without Sean Payton around, he's kind of useless on this team.
Yeah, I mean, I get the impression, and this is just my read, like I haven't talked to anybody close to the team or anything like that, but my read on this kind of situation is that, Sean Payton wanted to do this whole Taysom Hill thing, and the same way that we debate this on Twitter, like, is it smart? Is Sean Payton a donkey? Like, I think they're doing the same thing probably in those coaches' rooms and in the locker room, and I'm getting the impression that Dennis Allen is not on Team Taysom. Tells him, just forget the quarterback thing, go to tight end. And I don't know how much he's going to play at all.
Did you put any stock into when Jameis came over from Tampa Bay, and maybe this was a product of how the Tampa Bay offense had been run with Jameis, that he wasn't really a check down guy to the running backs? And that kind of came to some fruition at the beginning of last year. We weren't seeing the Alvin Kamara 22 target games like we had potentially seen in the past when it was just him and Drew Brees and they were playing catch up the entire time. That it kind of devalued the stock of Kamara a little bit, although they ran the ball more and he made up for it in different ways. Do you think that Jameis will be a check down guy to these running backs? If you can't project him to give at least like 7 to 10 targets a game to the running backs, I feel like it really hampers what we can make of these backfields, because Kamara right now is going around pick like 20, 22, 25. He's falling down that. There's the risk of the suspension. We don't know how this offense is going to look. And if you don't have all of that receiving game, that gives him it gives him both that solid floor and the massive upside week to week. If we can't count on that, even if it's diminished from, let's say, 20, 25% from his prime, like, what do you do with him in drafts right now?
Yeah, he's really tough to click on. I mean, you mentioned the suspension possibility. It sounds like 6 games is like well within the range of outcomes. We're already factoring in like potentially missing some time from these running backs to begin with. I mean, the whole zero RB stuff and the injury rates, like there's a ton of instability at this position to begin with. Now you're going to lock in maybe 6 games off the top. Like, just really tough to invest in a guy like that. And yeah, there is risk. I mean, some of these targets that Kamara has gotten, obviously we know that Drew Brees had an absolute noodle for an arm, but again, the lack of overall weapons in the offense, like, it was basically just Thomas and Kamara. Well, now they have a couple other guys that they can throw the ball to. So I'm not really convinced that even if, things are kind of going full bore and Winston's willing to check it down, that it's going to happen that much just because there's other guys now to throw the ball to.
One of the biggest transformations I've made over the years is going from ranking Mark Ingram in worst place for 8 straight years to thinking, why is he going after pick 200 right now if Kamara might be suspended? You might only get like 6 great weeks out of him. Maybe it's not him. Maybe it's Tony Jones. I recall when Tony Jones was a thing at certain points last year, but it just seemed like they brought in Ingram. Maybe it was a Peyton thing and just how he knew the offense. Do we think that Ingram is potentially the starter here if Kamara is out for the 6 weeks?
Yeah, I kind of like Ingram. I mean, truthfully, I think that if Kamara gets suspended, they're going to add it back. And I don't think that they have any interest in going to Tony Jones. I mean, Tony Jones was so good last year that they brought Mark Ingram back from the dead, to play for them. But, having experience in this offense, and we know that he can do the short yardage stuff at minimum, I definitely think that it has value. Now, in terms of backs that are out there, like, we know that a team like Cleveland, for example, has a ton of running backs. They have Kareem Hunt, they have Dearness Johnson, they have like legitimate NFL running backs behind Nick Chubb. That's the kind of like the range of guys that I'm looking maybe for the Saints to add. But I think that even if that happens, there's a decent chance that Ingram would have, some piece of that. So I like him. You mentioned outside of pick 200. I mean, what are we really giving up here?
It is. And even for season-long formats and in best ball as well, if you get 6, yes, especially in best ball and especially on DraftKings that the end of the season makes more sense than anything else. I had Herzog on last week and we talked about the week 17 correlations for your best ball lineups. You almost want to reverse engineer this because if you're going to win the big money, you need to win week 16 and 17 especially if you want to go get the big money. But you still need to get yourself there at some point too. And it's not like Alvin Kamara is immune to injury, that if Ingram gets this job out of the gate. And let's say he's one of the few running backs in football who has an over 70% snap share in the Saints backfield. And maybe the Saints backfields or the Saints offense is a lot better than maybe we're thinking. Michael Thomas comes back like you're playing for upside in a lot of these situations. You basically have 6 unencumbered weeks with Mark Ingram where he's the lead guy, where he'll probably be a top 20 running back every single week, going after pick 200 at the moment. And even when Kamara comes back, we have seen the Saints kind of nickel and dime us with no sort of full workload for anyone when Ingram is in the mix. There's going to be weeks where he sucks, but for season long, you can bench him. In best ball, hey, he's probably not going to make your optimal anyway. If he scores 2 touchdowns, he probably will. And Kamara's been hurt a bunch as well, that it wouldn't be crazy to think that, week 13 comes around, you still have Ingram, who, if this is his slot, just goes back into that plus 70% mold at running back and could be a league winner for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. There's just not a lot of risk. And that's, I know that Herzig, and I talk to Herzig about this best ball stuff all the time. We want the week 17 stuff, but we also have to kind of get there, right? So if we get those points early, in the season from a guy like Ingram, that gives us a little bit, that buoys us early, and that gives us a better chance of advancing.
One of the main reasons that I wanted to talk to you about this and talking about it in terms of projection, you kind of hit on it. These murky situations on offense that are difficult to project, that have the massive range of outcomes, can really give us a ton of value. Maybe it turns out to be no value whatsoever. It's a sunk cost, but the potential for the massive upside is there, especially in the middle to later rounds. So I look at the Cleveland offense. How do you think Deshaun Watson plays a snap this year?
If I had to guess now, I'd say no. I mean, it sounds like they're coming for him really hard. No comment really on obviously the nature of all this stuff, but I think that after the Trevor Bauer thing and the way that the NFL is kind of approaching this, it does seem like at minimum he's going to miss the year. So I'm kind of not expecting him to play. Yeah,
we have him projected at zeros across the board right now. We do not expect him to play. So it's not really a Deshaun Watson type of situation here. Is what does this offense look like with, I'm guessing, Jacoby Brissett? Because it feels like there's little to no chance that Baker ends up starting or playing a snap for the Browns this year. Or is that now back on the table?
I would say no shot. I mean, after everything that happened and the kind of the fallout, Baker going on those shows and saying the things he said about the team, I have to imagine that that's just completely done. So I am expecting 17 games potentially of Jacoby Brissett. So what does this offense look like with Jacoby Brissett? Because we've already seen Nick Chubb get kind of squeezed out, pushed down the board. He's going in the 3rd round at this point after being a first-round pick each of the past 5 years. Probably not 5 years, 3 years. Kareem Hunt is now going at pick 100 in this offense. Dearness Johnson well outside of the 200. Still before Mark Ingram, though, which is kind of crazy at this point, the 3rd running back on the Browns. But they bring over Amari Cooper and they get rid of Jarvis Landry. There's no Odell, so that seems like a pretty high market share. I think we're being conservative at runthesims.com at a 22% market share of the targets. It feels like it's probably going to be higher than that when he's far and away the best receiver on this team, because now we're dealing with Donovan Peoples-Jones. You got the Schwartz in here. David Bell, yeah, they drafted him. Who knows if he's any good? Jakeem Grant's interesting as a real-life player, not so much in fantasy unless kickoff return yards are counted, which they're not in a lot of circumstances. Is Cooper being underdrafted even with Jacoby Brissett around? Right now, he's going at pick 60. Yeah, I mean, it does feel kind of low, right? But oh my goodness, even with a 24% target share, which is what I have before, it's tough to get Cooper kind of up the board just because I don't really know where the scoring is going to come from. When the quarterback play goes from Deshaun Watson to Jacoby Brissett, that's a humongous gap in quarterback talent. I'm not really sure if he's going to get those deep 8-out targets or if that, if they would even be productive if they came. So I have a hard time kind of buying into Cooper. I have a hard time buying in a lot of pieces of this offense. I just see them being really conservative. We saw that, I think, the last couple years with Baker. When Baker was bad, they were pretty content to just run the ball on 1st down, run the ball on 2nd down. If it's less than 5 yards on 3rd down, run it again. And if it's not, then they'll try to throw. And I'm assuming that that's kind of what we're going to get this season. I mean, their defense is still decent. I think that they'll be in a lot of close games still. So I am much more likely to invest in the running back. And when you mentioned 3rd round Nick Chubb, I think that that's actually a really good price. They've shown a huge interest in just relying on him for long stretches of the game. We know that he can break off long touchdown runs. He's still going to be their guy in the short yardage situations, and he catches the ball a little bit. Especially if they were to move on from a guy like Hunt, maybe they were to trade Hunt, to the Saints or something like that. All of a sudden, you're getting a 3 down plus goal line type guy in the third round. I think that's really intriguing.
Yeah, Nick Chubb has really not been a favorite of mine over the past few years. Just it was all cost related in what he did on the field, especially in half point PPR and full point PPR, like you would see on DraftKings Best Ball. But even the season long leagues I play are generally all full point PPR, and he takes such a hit in those. Now, like you said, he catches a little bit, but not enough to make up the difference if he's not going, and he would split so much time with Hunt in certain circumstances that, it's great when he gets 20 carries a game, but when it's 20 carries for 80 yards and no touchdown, you have 8 points and you're way behind the 8 ball from your first round pick. But now at pick number 27 to like 25 to 30, the range that he's going in right now, he kind of looks like discount Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. Like, I feel like last year, like all the articles last year that I would have written basically saying, you can't draft a running back that looks like Nick Chubb in the first round. Here are the guys you could draft a little bit later. Well, now like Nick Chubb is that guy. Like, he's arbitrage Nick Chubb on himself. And I think that's something we want to take advantage of. Yeah,
it just this feels like an offense where if you just believe the guys that they have in this offense, the good players historically that we know are still actually good. Yes, Jacoby Brissett is a major downgrade, but it's not even certain that they're going to stick with Jacoby Brissett the entire time. If they trade Baker, trade Baker to Seattle. Hell, they might get Drew Lock or Geno Smith back. There we go. Maybe Sam Darnold ends up there if it's a Baker trade to Carolina. Like, not that that's any great shakes by any means, but at least with Lock and Darnold, even like Brissett's not afraid to air it out at all. Like, he just might say, hey, you're my guy. I'm throwing to you every time.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to have like Chris Streveler back there. Like, the guy that's going to play is at least like an NFL caliber quarterback.
Which means that we had 22% market share for Amari Cooper, and that made him wide receiver number 23 on the season. If I bump that up to 27%, he's now wide receiver 12. He's a low-end wide receiver 1. It just feels like everyone is so out on this offense that Chubb and Cooper are actually coming at a pretty good value for what we can see from their top end of the range. Like, I don't even think 27% is the top end of his range of outcomes. Like, I have Brendan Cooks probably around like 1/3 of the targets on the Texans. I wouldn't be surprised to see Amari Cooper the same way.
Yeah, that could definitely happen. I mean, like you said, David Bell's a rookie. He's unproven, like a lot of these other guys. Even if they're decent, like, it sounds like they're probably role players at best. I think Njoku is like a real threat after the contract, but this definitely could end up being basically what we saw last year in Houston, where it's just Brissett finds his one guy, says, all right, we're going to Amari. This is it. And, Amari still got juice. Like, I do feel like because he was traded and maybe the end of the season wasn't what we wanted, that people are, assuming that Amari is like dust. Like, I don't think that we're in dust territory yet on Amari Cooper. I'm pretty sure he can still play.
Yeah, he's 28 years old. He is now on his third team. You just look at some of the receivers going before him right now. And I mean, I promise I wouldn't bring up Gabe Davis, but he's sort of in that range and rising at that point. Like, if you had to put their projections side by side, Cooper versus Davis, like, they would have to look probably pretty similar, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I think right now I have Amari as my wide receiver 20. And Gabe Davis is my wide receiver 23 in full PPR. So they are, as you said, very close to each other.
And the discount that you're getting on Cooper v. Davis at the moment is pretty substantial. It's like 2 rounds at this point.
All right. You've convinced me. I'm in. I said I wasn't sure if I was going to go for the Browns wide receiver, but I think I have to now.
All right. So now we're on Amari and Chubb presenting a good value. You hit on the key name, David Njoku. He gets this big contract, but just because he has the big contract doesn't mean they're going to throw him the ball. They've had this guy for the past 4 years and didn't throw him the ball. Why change?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there definitely is something to the tight ends not developing as quickly. And there's like this weird thing with Njoku the last couple of years where they're like mixing in like Harrison Bryant and I mean, they signed Austin Hooper. Like, I'm just like when are we just going to do the Njoku thing? Like, you drafted him in the first round. And I guess the answer was, we don't want to use him as a first round pick. We actually want to pay him a bunch of money first, and then we're going to use him. He's tough just because I think that, a tight end, especially, you really want to have that touchdown upside. And that's where, like, a guy like Amari, like, you can just pepper him with targets and he'll get a bunch of those PPR points. I'm not really sure that Njoku will do that, but he's still basically like a fringe tight end 1, I would say, even with the uncertainty in the offense right now.
And he is going at pick. Where is he at here? David Njoku pick. Yeah, like he's past pick 150. So he's not at the very end of the draft, but he's close to the very end of the draft. We haven't projected his tight end number 16. That's with a 14% market share. But if you told me at the end of the year Harrison Bryant had more fantasy points than David Njoku, I wouldn't be super stunned by that.
Yeah, like I said, they've shown a real propensity to rotate these guys. You would assume that with the money that would change, but I mean, you never really know. I feel like the tight end position every offseason, like these guys get paid. Like Ian Thomas got a bunch of money. I feel like teams just are paying these guys. I don't want to say above market rate. Like maybe that's just the market. Like you pay a tight end, you pay him a lot of money because you know what he can do, and the production doesn't have to be there for him to have a role in your offense.
Well, especially because Njoku is actually, I mean, he hurt his hand at one point, but he's been a historically pretty good blocker. That if you're going to be a team that runs the ball at one of the highest rates in football, overpaying a tight end with freak athleticism and as a potential red zone threat, but mainly to be another offensive lineman for you, I think that actually does hold real value to NFL teams when you're paying someone. It doesn't really do shit for us in fantasy, though. It's like the Robert Woods situation in Tennessee. Like Robert Woods is such a good blocker. That makes so much sense to replace. I mean, obviously you're not going to turn Robert Woods into AJ Brown from a receiving perspective, but for what he can do for you in that offense when you just want to lean on Derrick Henry the entire time, I think it does make some logical sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say the same for Sammy Watkins in Green Bay. I feel like he's one of the better run blockers as well, even though we're not sure if he can still catch.
Oh, he can catch. They're just not going to ask him to catch at all. That's just going to be a thing. Arizona, DeAndre Hopkins. I think do we get the full appeal on his suspension yet? Did it get dropped to 4 or is it still at 6 right now?
Right now, I still have it as 6. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
A lower on the appeal.
It could get dropped. So now we're in a situation where he's out either 4 or 6 games in this offense. They bring in Hollywood Brown. Rondell Moore still kicking. AJ Green is still kicking. How do you project Hopkins in this offense? Because, I mean, who would you have as the one, if let's say all things being equal? Would you have Hollywood or would you have DeAndre Hopkins as the premier threat and fantasy option if there was no suspension?
I would still be going Hollywood Brown. And I love Hollywood Brown this year. Like, I think that you look at this offense and what Cliff Kingsbury kind of did, like year one DeAndre, he was pounding DeAndre with targets. Wasn't moving DeAndre around the formation. Wasn't letting him do different things. Just like from that one spot on the left side of the offense, threw him the ball a ton. Last year, that changed a lot. They had a bunch of guys in like the 30 to 100 target range, but they weren't really willing to go to Hopkins as often. They really spread the ball out. And I think that that's kind of like a staple of the air raid. So I look at a guy like Marquise Brown and I'm like, okay, well, he's a guy who can be efficient enough on limited targets to play at a high level, to produce at a high level. And then if they do shorten the target tree up a little bit, if they say, let's focus on our top guys, well, now the upside's even higher. So I really like Brown. I got to plug Levitan, shower narrative here, Marquise Brown and Kyler Murray, playing together at Oklahoma. I feel like that actually really matters. Like we've seen that having, tangible value over the last couple of seasons in other spots. So I think that Brown is the guy to target, even if Hopkins wasn't suspended, but especially with him suspended, I kind of think that we're getting a decent deal here on Hollywood.
The issue right now is that he's going at pick number 35. Like, is that still a good deal? That seems high.
It's definitely high, but like, I don't know, like, couldn't you see a situation where, like Hopkins comes back and is just like an 18% target share guy and like Hollywood is just the dude? Because that's kind of like to me, that's within the range of outcomes. So like, he's going in like that 30s range, but that's still like 20, wide receiver 20, wide receiver 24. Like that's still low end wide receiver 2 draft capital. Like I still think he has wide receiver 1 upside. So to me, that's still a buy.
I don't know if I personally don't think that he does have wide receiver 1 upside with Hopkins still lingering around. And what we've seen from Kyler Murray in the second half of these seasons, that it seems like he gets so banged up the first 10 weeks that he's just not the same guy in the second half of the season. Obviously, that can change, but if he's not changing his playing style, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, it's probably going to happen again, isn't it?
Yeah, and I will say that's been kind of like a team-wide thing for them. Like, they have not been productive overall. Obviously, the quarterback is going to be a big part of that, but, defensively, they haven't produced as well in the second half. So I'm not really sure like what's kind of in the water in Arizona, but there is like a part of me that's just like, maybe this is just some bad variance for them. Maybe they're kind of due here in the second half of these seasons to play a lot better. And I still think that Kyler is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So I don't want to just like discount him and say, oh, like, November, December, Kyler, like it's just going to be bad. Like I still think that it could be really good.
Not that these things are mutually exclusive because you could do both, but we just talked about Amari Cooper going at pick 60 and Hollywood Brown going at pick 35. It seems like those two are in exactly the same ballpark with upside and downside.
Yeah, I would say that the difference is just that we already know the quarterback play is there. So maybe he obviously has a lot more competition. Like Amari, you're kind of like, okay, there's not as much competition, so he can get there on volume, which is fine. Obviously that's perfectly acceptable. But I think with Arizona, there's also that quarterback play element where like, if Hopkins is just dust, like, if he's actually not good anymore, or they just go away from him, like, they're going to talk about Brown maybe potentially being like a high target share player from a good quarterback. And to me, that's like a different tier.
Well, Hopkins is 30, and he did one of my favorite things of all time for guys that are aging. Do some PEDs. Make yourself better. Capture that. You've 6 games. Who cares? It's the NFL. These guys should be allowed to do PEDs anyway with the beating that they're taking. But he's going at pick number 80 right now. If you don't think that he's dust and that he is 90% DeAndre Hopkins coming off the roids, we saw Antonio Gates do this one year where it looked like he was washed. 4-game PED suspension, comes back, brand new guy, looking like vintage Antonio Gates again. Maybe the same thing can happen here. Like I don't care that he did PEDs. If anything, I think it's only going to help him later in the season. And I think that missing the first few games for a 30-year-old receiver probably is going to help him, at least for the rest of the regular season, continue to perform at what's close to an elite level. If we were thinking about later in the season, is that a good price for Hopkins for the potential reward that you could get around pick 75, 80, 85, just because people don't want to draft him?
It's possible. And again, like maybe this is because like last year I targeted these guys and none of them panned out. The suspended and injured guys, like Fuller and all these dudes. Like I just feel like none of them paid off. Thomas last year. So I'm kind of trying to avoid that this year. Maybe I'm overreacting to the one season of bad results from these types of players, but I don't know. Like if they hadn't added Brown and it was kind of like Hopkins is going to slide right back into that top dog role automatically, I would feel a lot better about it. But now it's like, I'm not really even sure that that's going to happen. So I have a hard time paying that price.
Any love for Rondell Moore and his negative ADOT?
I need to let him go. Like I'm mad you even brought him up. Like I'm just trying so hard to, like I was just so in on him as a prospect and last year, and I'm trying to let it go a little bit because if they just view him as being this like glorified like jet sweep player, and he's just gonna have like 100 targets but 12 total air yards, like I can't let that happen again. I can't do that to myself.
Obviously, Chase Edmonds is gone. It's James Conner's backfield at the moment. He's going to pick number 30 in drafts right now. If it's not him, they bring in Darrell Williams. Benjamin is still back there as well. Who would be the primary back to target after Connors? Because Connors was great last season. A lot of it was touchdown production. Probably don't see that going anywhere right now unless Kyler starts calling his own number near the goal line again. But it did seem like he was trying to run less, especially in high collision type situations and short yardage. If you see 40 yards in front of you, yeah, let's go run. I don't want to be running it up the middle on 2nd and goal from the 5-yard line where I'm just going to get smushed by some dude who's 400 pounds. Let's give that to James Conner. But Conner hasn't been like a modicum of health over the years either, that it does seem like there's potential in this backfield to find someone after pick 200. Right now, it is Darrell Williams. He's going at pick number 160, but everyone else, 215, 217, 300, undrafted. Is there someone in this backfield that we could potentially stash back end of our roster that could have huge upside?
I think I'm still Team Eno here. I know that Williams was productive last year with the Chiefs, but I don't know. Like, I think that's like a bird in the hand type of deal. Like they talked up Eno a bunch. He did play well in the one game last year where Connor and Edmonds were both kind of hurt. Or I think Connor actually had gotten hurt mid-game, but Eno played well in that spot. They bring in Darrell, who he's not like a dude, like it's not like automatically he should be the backup. Now, granted, I think that Williams is more likely maybe to have the pass catching type role, the Edmonds type role, in the event of a Connor injury. But Benjamin is going to get like all those short yard touchdowns that Connor was getting. He's not a bad pass catcher. It's not like he couldn't do it if they left him on the field. So I'm kind of leaning that way still. I just don't like, I don't know if like, Keontae Ingram on day 3 of the draft, Darrell Williams, like 3 months into free agency. Like, I'm just not sure that that's like saying anything bad about Benjamin. I think it's just like, let's just get some guys in the room.
Yeah, I can completely see that. I think that Benjamin is probably the risk that I was going to take if I was going to target one of these second string, third string guys with the potential to move up in an opportunistic. I mean, weren't we just 2 years removed from James Conner sucks and can only rush for 2 yards a carry, and then he was great last year?
Yeah, exactly. Like these things change so much, especially at running back. Like I'm still in on and I'm happy that James Conner's back, man. Like he's crushing. Like first round player, second round player, wherever you take him, like he's the best investment probably right now on the roster.
Tampa Bay offense. Godwin, do we know how long Godwin is going to be out for? Like, do you have a guess at a return time for him?
I'm projecting him to miss 3 games right now. I'm pretty sure he had the surgery in January, like early January. So 9 months out, like that's going to put him like early October. So I would imagine that he's going to miss at least 3 games. They're talking pup. I feel like they do that every year with all these injured guys. Like, oh, he's a public candidate. Like ultimately, like they're going to want to be able to activate Chris Godwin and use him whenever he's ready. Now, could it be 6 games? I guess, but I'm going to imagine that he's missing like the first 3 weeks, the first month of the season. And then they'll kind of play it from there.
So how does that work in terms of the projections? Because obviously they bring in Russell Gage, a player who's just getting a lot of steam at the moment. In lieu of, are those Antonio Brown numbers? Gronk has retired at this point in time. Who is the guy they were talking up this week? It's not going to be Cameron Braid. It's going to be this guy that I've like legit never heard of. He's the new guy. Cade Otton. Is that a real person?
Yeah, he's a rookie tight end out of Washington, but I think that he's really more of like he can catch, but like he's more of like a blocking, like can do both kind of things. So I feel like if he's out there, like he's out there to block, and they're going to let Brady do his thing. I don't really get I'm not in on the Otton buzz right now.
So I've had a few discussions about Mike Evans so far, and the general consensus has been, he doesn't have what it takes to be wide receiver number 1, but that's fine. There's a lot of guys who don't have the potential to be the number 1 overall receiver. I actually think that Mike Evans does in a weird way, and it all kind of depends on how long that Godwin is out for, because without Gronk, I don't want to play coach here, but if the move is to throw to super tall guy in the end zone and you have 2 of them out there, you take away one of those guys. The other guy could really stand to benefit in the touchdown department.
Yeah, I agree with that. Why would Evans not have wide receiver overall?
Because Russell Gage is on the team. He's too good.
Like he plays in like literally the best offense in the league, like with literally the best quarterback. Like I don't like that's kind of what you want. I'm now granted, like I'm really happy that Mike Evans is getting his due. I feel like this guy has just been a value every single year because he gets no credit, from the drafting community. Now he's going like as a top 10 receiver, but that's like a fine price. Like it's not like I'm not avoiding him there. I definitely am still drafting him there. I'm just not like aggressively smashing the button every single time he's there.
Yeah, it's pick number 19 for Mike Evans right now. And at that price, as a back-end second-round pick, he doesn't need to be wide receiver 1. He can be wide receiver 5. That's still going to pay off his price.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, like it's okay to, like you said, like it's okay to take a guy that's wide receiver 10 and like he finishes at wide receiver 10. I know I'm like not supposed to say that, like, but like not every pick on your roster is going to return value, especially if you're like just drafting a guy high. Like it's fun that guy to just be exactly what you drafted him to be, which is a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, it's funny when people talk about that at the beginning of drafts, be it for best ball on DraftKings or in season-long formats. It's just if your first 5 round picks can be absolute just push value, not losing, not gaining, they can be just 5 good players. No one gets hurt. No one busts. Like that's what you want to avoid is the bust. You drafted them at a high price. You hope that they're good. That's what you're putting your stock into. So if you pick someone at number 7 overall and they're the 7th best player in fantasy, realistically, when you go and look at the first round, they're going to be like the 3rd best player from the first round, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. Like I think so many of these guys move values. Like the values change so aggressively after the draft that it's like, okay, like you're going to win your league or you're going to win your best ball championship or any of that stuff because of like the guy that you find in round 10 or round 12 or something like that. Like the guys that are early, like of course they can go absolutely nuclear and they can win you your league, but like we don't want to just like look at these guys as bad investments if they don't do that.
Yeah, like even if Evans is being drafted as wide receiver 7 right now, like you said, and he finishes at wide receiver 11, you'll take it. It's fine. That's still a really good year. He didn't flame it. It's not like you drafted a guy in the second round and you didn't get to play him the entire year. That's a low-end wide receiver 1, and you need to find the 14th round guy, the 10th round guy that is actually good, who can replace the actual mistakes on your roster, and that's how you end up winning. Right now, Chris Godwin is still going at pick number 58, which I will say is still ahead of both Brendan Cooks and Amari Cooper at the moment. Is that a good value for him because he's been a depreciated asset because he might miss anywhere between 3 and 6 games? Who knows? If he gets put on PUP, he's going to miss 6. But again, when you're thinking best ball purposes, you are thinking towards the end of the season. You could have Chris Godwin for that. I just having a really tough time clicking on that name with some of the other healthier names that are around him, albeit in probably a worse quarterback situation.
Yeah, I don't think that the discount is good enough yet. It might get there, especially we get into July and August and, guys start moving up the board with these camp reports and stuff like that. Like then maybe we see Godwin move down and it becomes a buy. But like right now it's like, okay, like a little bit murky, like when he's going to play. I get that the offense is still going to be really good whenever he gets there, but there's still like a lot of risk that you don't get much of him for the first month and a half of the season. And it's just really difficult again, like to buy something like that. I mean, Godwin is still going in range of like a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I love, Brandon Cooks, who we know is like super reliable. Juju Smith-Schuster, like could he have the bounce back this year playing with Patrick Mahomes? I got to get that out of you.
No is the answer to that. Thank you.
And of course, Gabriel Davis. Like there's just a lot of guys over here that I feel like have, about the same upside and don't have like that immediate knife in the value, that Godwin has.
Russell Gage is now under pick 80. He's at pick number 77. He's been moving up and Godwin has been moving down. I get Russell Gage. I completely get it. But are we even sure that he's better than Brashad Perriman?
I do feel good that he's better than Brashad Perriman. I do think that that's a really low bar. I mean, this is a guy that just got like straight up cut from the Lions, and we didn't hear anything from him until Tom Brady was like, "Yeah, we could use a receiver." Like, I don't know if that's the end all be all. I do think that Russell Gage is like kind of good. I would say that like where he's going now in drafts is like fine. I'm not like completely fading him at this price. I'm definitely not aggressively targeting him at this price, which it seems like some people are doing because he keeps moving up. I just think he's fine. Like, I don't think he's going to come in and be Antonio Brown. I think that like when everyone's back, like that's kind of the role that he's going to have. And that seems fair. Like if he's like a 110 target receiver playing with Tom Brady, like that's going to produce, like that's going to be pretty safe. But I'm not really sure that I buy him as like this like mega upside ceiling play.
Yeah, I'm not there either, just because it's very difficult to project him for too many touchdowns. Obviously more with the Bucs than with the Falcons the past few years, but it's not like there was a bunch of options in Atlanta taking away from his touchdown share. There are some guys who have a proclivity for scoring touchdowns, either due to body type, able to create a lot of separation in a very quick amount of time in a very close space. And there's other guys who run over the middle and run button hooks for 11 yards. Maybe they can break a guy and get down the field. I would say that Mike Evans is the former. Russell Gage is probably the latter. Would that track?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, honestly, like if they're going to replace some of this touchdown production, like doesn't that just go to like to Brate? Like I don't really see why all of a sudden it has to go to Russell Gage. Like he'll score like 4 or 5 touchdowns this year, I would imagine. Like if I'm projecting, like that's where I'd project him. Like I don't think that like anybody playing with Tom Brady, like I don't want to say like can he score 10 touchdowns because it's possible. But like if we're talking about most likely, I'm saying like 4 or 5.
Yeah, I could see his PPR floor being fantastic this year, piling up like the 7 for 84 on 10 targets. You hope he scores sort of like a 70% Wes Welker, not his best season, but like a good Wes Welker, Julian Edelman season from New England with Brady. I could see that for Russell Gage. Does he have the upside to have those peak seasons? Absolutely. I just don't think that he's going to get there. And I think that the price is becoming a bit prohibitive at this point of the draft season. We'll see how that ends up shaking out once we get more definitive news about where Chris Godwin's injury actually ends up in terms of timetable. Are you still drafting Gronk at the end of drafts? Because he's coming back, by the way.
Yeah, no, I am definitely on team Gronk is taking a vacation right now. Which is totally cool. Like I get it. Like why would you want to go through like training camp and all that stuff? And I know that people will say like he technically isn't on the team, like he doesn't actually have to do that, but I just think that like it's way better if you're Rob Gronkowski, like they can call you every day and ask you if you're coming back, or you can just say you're retired and you don't get any questions until you decide to come back. Like to me, that's looks like a way better option. So I think he's gonna play. I'm not exactly sure when, but I think that he's still worth a stab just because we know that he can still be like, which is crazy, like still like a top 6 tight end in this offense. So I am definitely still buying him.
Let's see. Tampa Bay Buccaneers schedule. When is their bye week? Because I think that should be a pretty good indication of what we're looking at here for the season. Bucs schedule. If they have like a week 8 bye, he's coming back in week 9 or week 10, and then we'll be off to the races. Week 10. Bye week 11? Yeah, week 12. Gronk returns against Cleveland Browns. There you go. Can we make that bet right now?
I mean, I hope he doesn't take that long, selfishly, just because I do have him on a couple of my teams. But yeah, that definitely makes some sense.
The backfield is the last thing I want to end on here for the Buccaneers. You got Fournette, obviously no more Ronald Jones. Can't be. I mean, you can piss your money away with him in the hell is he at now? Oh yeah, he's in Kansas City. That'll be a fun one,
buddy. We will. Yeah, we will.
There's an instant way to lose money. So now you have Fournette. You have, let's see, Gio Bernard is still here. Kenyon Barner. They're basically like the same types of guys. Keyshawn Vaughn sticks around on this team. What do you make of the rookie?
I really like Rachaad White. I mean, the stuff that we did at ETR pre-draft, we were very high on White as someone who can be an immediate impact player as a pass catcher in the NFL. He kind of ends up like in the perfect spot to do that because we know that Brady loves to throw the ball to the running backs. I know that Fournette has done that the last couple seasons, but it hasn't been great. Like it's kind of just been like the best of the worst. Even when Gio Bernard's been healthy, he's been taking some of that work away. So I like White quite a bit. I think that he does have some potential to carry a decent rushing load, but I think that it's most likely that they kind of like pigeonhole these two guys maybe in two separate tiers of production where it's like, Fournette's going to do all the early down stuff. He's going to get all the goal line work. And then, White is going to be like that clear, I think like 3rd down, 2-minute type guy, or at least potentially. I mean, it's only a couple years ago that they drafted Vaughn and we thought that role would go to him. So I don't want to overplay my hand here, but I think the price is still good on White to be buying.
White is pick number 135 right now in DraftKings Best Ball Drafts. Fournette is going around pick 22. I can't tell with Fournette if that's good value or bad value because he could, if we're creating a path to who could be the number 1 running back this year, there is a path for Fournette to be that guy, as crazy as that sounds.
Oh, yeah, I don't think it's crazy at all. I mean, it's not inconceivable because it's already recently happened that, like, White gets out there, he misses one pass block, and, like, Brady's like, can you get this guy off the freaking field? Like Leonard Fournette the whole way. And, like, that's just what happens. And all of a sudden, Fournette's a guy that has, like, 16 or 18 touchdowns and 60 catches, like, and he has this like nuclear season. Like that's totally possible. So I think buying both of these guys is definitely the right play. At Fournette's price, like I don't think you have to go too crazy, but he should be, evenly mixed, I would say, in your drafts, because he does have that upside.
Yeah, and I guess he has that injury. All running backs have the injury downside too, but you just worry that does he? I mean, it's not like he's even looked explosive, so I'm not even too concerned that he like loses a step because that doesn't seem to matter in this offense, especially if he can continue his role in this receiving game, which he had some big numbers last year. It just to save a lot of his weeks, like a 7 catches on 8 targets for 39 yards type of game. Like all that stuff adds up, and it's sort of like the anti-Nick Chubb argument from the years is that if he has a bad game, a good game with no touchdowns, it's 10 points. I mean, Fournette can get more than that in the receiving game and still have a bad game, plus the touchdown and rushing upside that can go along with it. It's why we like these sorts of running backs over just the pure ball carrier. You want sort of a combo back in this situation. Like we have him projected right now for 214 rushes, 954 yards, 11 TDs, and 57 catches on 67 targets and 5 touchdowns. That would make him running back number 8 on the season. I could see him going well over all of those numbers in both facets.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Like I said, like literally all it takes is Rachaad White to just like not get a big role, and he's there. Like I don't think that's crazy.
It's a scary click.
It's always scary with Lenny, but like I don't know, man. We got to let some of this stuff go with him, right? Like those Jaguars days, like the days of getting completely toasted by Lenny. Like this is playoff Lenny now, man. Like he's back. Like this is the best of his career.
Well, you got Fournette going at pick like 22, and you have DeAndre Swift going at pick 15. I think Swift's a better player at this point in time. But if we're just going to talk about weird situations within an offense where they just start using random other dudes, Detroit seems far more likely to do that than Tampa Bay right now.
Yeah, way more likely, and just doesn't have that overall offensive stability. Like Swift could get 220 carries and 80 catches or something and like score 4 touchdowns. Like that could totally happen with this team.
Yeah, that wouldn't be surprising whatsoever. It's shocking to see him go a full round ahead of Fournette at this point. I get that people are enamored with the upside of DeAndre Swift and being the combo type guy. Like he could be Alvin Kamara. And you see these weeks where he's running back number 2, running back number 1, but you don't see a lot of the running back 51 weeks from Leonard Fournette where you do with DeAndre Swift at the same time. So, upside is most definitely there. And I don't know if this is going to be the year that Swift brings the stability that Fournette we know has locked in when healthy. Anyway, Anthony, thanks for being on the line, dude. That was fun.
Yeah, of course, man. Anytime. This has been great.
Football guys, establishtheRun.com, Substack. You can find Anthony Amico's work in all of those places. Anything cool coming up?
Well, I mean, we're continuing to update the Dynasty stuff at ETR. Projections are constantly being updated at Football Guys. I did build this really cool app for the Substack player comp projections app. Basically, you put in a player, has to be someone that played last year, and it gives you all the comps. You can kind of you can set like how specific you want to get, but it gives you all the comps of the player that you pick, the closest seasons to that season that he just had, and then gives you some projections based off that. So I think it's a really useful tool. Definitely something I recommend people checking out.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. You can hit the entire draft guide for free down in the description. You want to build your own projections or just check out the season-long NFL projections, which continuously get updated with all of the new news. RunTheSims.com. You go to RunTheSims.com, enter your email address, and boom, you have full access to the projections. You can export them out and use them as your rankings if that's how you want to play it. But you can go fuck around with all of them in there, increase some guys, decrease some guys, whatever you think is going to happen this season. You can do it all customizable at RunTheSims.com. Smash the like on the way out. Check out those other shows. And I'll be back with Mike Leone and Jake Seeley as we construct the rankings for the 2022 fantasy football season. Hope to see you then, but till then, I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!